Hey guys, what's going on? I'm Kyle Crawford here with Merle, and we're excited to be here. Excited to get another episode going for you guys. Yeah, we're it's nice, sunny outside today. It's looking good, looking
It
good.
is. This is a show today that this was kind of right in my wheelhouse just because of the role that I played in the
Sure.
school as a school counselor. And even though I was a school counselor, a whole lot of my work was centered around discipline.
Okay.
And counselors typically try to stay away from disciplining kids, but in the setting that I was in, sometimes it played a little combination of assistant principal and counselor. And at first, I didn't really like that. I thought, man, what a mixed emotion that I'm giving these kids. What I really started to realize is this is just like a dad.
Yeah.
This is what a dad does. You
Sure.
got to kind of have both things in place. Yeah, so this is, so much just like being a dad, and the idea that we balance our discipline and the encouragement and the love and all those things is something that really is what Christ calls us to do in the home. So
Sure.
this show is going to be hopefully eye-opening, but revealing and empowering to our dads and to our moms. So if you're a mom out there listening, this is as much for you as it is for dad.
And we'll get into that a little bit about being on the same page with your wife, with your spouse, as far as when it comes to discipline in your house. I think that's a big topic for today.
Yeah. So discipline is one of these things that it seems this show has had up in the publicity of the newspapers and the media every time something tragic happens, like a child is beaten or abused or something like that.
Right.
And I think what we have to be really careful with is not throwing the baby out with the bathwater, so to speak, on the issues of discipline.
Merle, that's a really old saying, I think. I looked that up because at first when you said it the first time, I had no idea what you were talking about.
Wait, are you referencing my age again? Is that what this is about?
That's before your time, isn't it?
That's way before my time. Yeah, that was when bath waters first started. Now we do showers. So
I had to look that up because I told my
any
wife,
chance you can, you will dig on my age.
I told my wife, I'm like, what the heck is he talking? He keeps referencing the baby out with a bath.
You're terrible, man. You need to get with the times, the old times.
I know, I'm sorry. Anyways.
That's good. Yeah, but what happens is, we have these bad incidents, and they're bad, okay, of abuse or whatever. And the next thing you know, everybody's jumping on the idea that kids are being abused when they're being disciplined. And so what I saw actually in the parents that I worked with is a reluctance to discipline for fear of what other people might think, what your kid might do. Literally, I have had kids call 241 Kids or call child services on their parents because kids also hear this message that you can't discipline me.
Right.
And what a terrible message that is for the general body of what we need to do as parents. And so we're not going to throw the baby out with the bathwater, okay, Kyle? We're going to keep it here, and we're going to talk about, what's the difference between good discipline and bad discipline? Let's separate this out so that we don't throw the concept out the door. Right?
Yeah, because some of those cases on the news are examples of bad discipline, of parents taking it too far, knowing that they have the ability to do that, to spank their kids. But when you take it too far, if it's coming from the right place, I don't think there's anything wrong with spanking your kids. As long as your kids understand what they did, there's consequences.
Yeah. Well, my take on spanking and all other forms. So, as a counselor, I'd have people come in and say, well, is it okay to spank, or what do you think about that? Over the years, here's the bottom line. You do what works effectively, okay? And so I've had kids that you could even threaten to spank, and they would never do that behavior again because that was very scary or intimidating to them, okay? But I've had kids that, I'm jokingly, but you could beat them every day with a 2x4, and that wasn't going to change their behavior, okay? In fact, I have one of those that live in my house, and he's a tough kid, and because of that, that just does not really work for him. Right. And so, and we did try to spank him, and it just was not creating the results. And as we'll talk about in the show, where we wanted to go long term
Sure.
with the character that we were trying to build in him.
Yeah.
So we've had to go different approaches with him. And I always caution parents, be very careful about reading one book about discipline that will fit all of your kids, because your kids are all different. And like I said before, one kid, you can cross your eyes at him and stare him down, and he's done with that behavior. He'll never do that again. And another kid, you could yell and scream at, and they're just a tougher-willed kid or whatever, and that methodology is not going to work. Right. So parent or discipline is not about methodology, right? It is much more about your philosophy and how you carry it out on a daily basis. And so we're going to really get into that today. So dads, hang in there. Whatever you did or had done to you when you were being raised, we're going to pull what is good from that, and we want to build off of that. And if your discipline that you received as a kid was hurtful or abusive, okay, we got to learn from that.
Sure.
And that doesn't mean we throw everything out the window, because there are some nuggets out of there that we want to grab and continue to do with our kids, and some things that we say, no, that was just not right or not effective. So, man, the Bible is full of discussion about discipline. And this is not a new idea. And I think it's very interesting because it speaks to our human nature. Our human nature is filled with fleshly desires, right? I mean, I just can't wait to have what I want, whether it's food, whether it's toys, whether it's money, whether it's women, whatever it is, right? I just can't wait to have what I want. And a kid is no different. And we see adults are absolutely still in line with those fleshly desires. And so the Bible speaks all through in Proverbs and throughout about the need to self-regulate, the need to understand when you're being pulled to those things, because those pulls to these fleshly desires will also lead to your destruction.
Right. And one of my favorite verses in Proverbs that I was actually reading not too long ago. It says it's Proverbs 29:17. It's discipline your children, and they will give you peace of mind and will make your heart glad. Which I think is really cool. And throughout, a lot in Proverbs when they reference discipline a lot, they also discuss and talk a lot about being wise in that and making sure, similar to what we were just talking about, making sure that your discipline, you have an end game while you're disciplining your kids. Not just disciplining for the immediate right now fix. Like, you want to be wise in that.
Right. So we do want to change the behavior, right? But it's not just that behavior, because sometimes we could just change the behavior by locking a kid up in a room, and that's not what we're advocating here. Okay. So we want to work the character here of this child.
Absolutely.
And we talk a lot about discipline, but discipline done wrong in Colossians 3:21 is, we've heard this before. Fathers, do not embitter your children, or they will become discouraged. In that whole idea of, if you keep beating them down, if you don't show grace at times, if you don't understand a little bit deeper about their emotions and their growth and where they're at in life, and you just constantly have the beat down going on, you will break a spirit, okay? And that's one of the things. So when we do discipline, when I did that in the school setting, and we would be proposing like a behavior plan for a child, we would talk about, okay, this is going to really stress this child out when we start working on these different things we're talking about doing. And I would mention the idea that, okay, yes, stress causes, the challenge here is causing stress. We go, but we do not break the spirit of the kid. In other words, we're not going to go to the point where the kid has nothing to live for. And so that, as a parent, we keep our finger on that pulse. We're like, okay, yes, you're having a bad day and you just got disciplined, but what are we going to do to work through it? Come on, you can do this, and we keep pulling them through it versus the total beat down constant that they finally their spirit is broken.
Right.
And that's a depressed kid.
Sure.
And that leads to a whole different level of problems.
Absolutely.
So we always keep our finger on the pulse of their spirit.
Yeah.
You know, do they still have some of that fight in them? Do they still have that energy to get out and live life?
Which is the idea of a wise discipline. Like,
Yes.
we want to make sure in our discipline we are constantly encouraging, not just, we're talking about in Colossians where it's discouraging. We want to be the opposite of that. We want to make sure that our discipline is encouraging our kids to get better at themselves, be a new, better version of themselves.
Yeah, yeah. So, man, this is a great topic. Let's get into talking a little bit about the things that we can do as dads, how we approach discipline, so that we can actually start to reform maybe some of what we're currently doing to help our dads out. So let's talk about dads being an authoritative leader.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah, this is good.
Yeah, there's two. The way I always presented this in my work was there's basically kind of two types of leaders out there. There's an authoritative leader and there's an authoritarian leader.
Sure.
And they're very different. And an authoritative leader is someone that you know their presence and their strength and their leadership just by their actions.
Yep.
Just by their presence, just by the tone of their voice, just by how they carry things out, their predictability, okay, their confidence that they have.
That's a big one, the confidence.
Yeah, they don't second guess themselves, even sometimes even if they're wrong on something, they're calm and they drive forward. I often think of this an authoritative leader. If you think about if we were in a battle scene, and I have my 10 guys behind me and I'm the leader, and we're in a nasty battle scene, with a gunfight, and all of a sudden, me as the leader, all my guys are looking to me, and I just start yelling and screaming and kind of losing my mind with emotion.
Yep.
That's probably going to get me and my guys killed.
Sure.
Okay? The emotional side of that is going to get us in trouble. And so the authoritative leader is the guy that even when the gunfight, even when the battle is going on, all the other guys can look to him and say, boss, what do we do?
And this is big at my work. I see this all the time. I have quite a few bosses that would fit in more to the authoritative, where you just know they're calm, cool, collected. One of my bosses, he always says, whenever I talk on the radio, I talk like I'm bored. And that's so encouraging to me inside of a fire when I hear my person on the outside is calm, cool, collected, doesn't have to say, listen to me because I'm the leader, I'm in charge here.
Yeah, good point.
Yeah, but they're just there, their presence, you just know everything's going to be okay. You have a calm sense about it. He's very confident in his skills and his abilities, and he doesn't have to tell you that he's good at his job. You just know he is.
I love that point right there, Kyle, because parents do this all the time, and that's the idea that I'm in charge here. Yeah. It's my house. This is what you do. When you have to tell people that you're in charge, you're probably not. Okay. In other words, you've done things before that you're even questioning yourself, and so you're actually talking to yourself and yelling at your kids and telling them that you're in charge and that it's your house and all these things it does not indicate that you really have the leadership skill that you need. Okay, so we want to talk about being authoritative, and that's just the idea that you trust in yourself. You trust in the decisions you're going to make. And again, even if they're wrong, right? Yeah. Because sometimes in the battle, things are going to happen, and you're going to make a wrong call.
Sure.
Now, we do come back and we correct those, but we correct them after the fact, whether it's an apology if that's necessary or we clean up a mess, because things happen and things go wrong. Yeah. But when we're in the heat of the battle and when we're disciplining children and those emotions can run high, we stay calm and we just keep on marching forward. Yeah. And your kids start to go, well, if Dad said it, it must be true.
Which is the idea that we should be disciplining because we lead by example. Like,
yes.
And this is a struggle for me because I'll tell my girls, hey girls, you probably shouldn't say that curse word, but then I say it.
You got to foul them out, don't you? You got to foul them out.
So you know, as an authoritative leader, you need to make sure that you're in a position that you are leading because you are doing the same things you expect the people under you or your kids, the same thing you expect them to do, you should be practicing yourself.
Yeah. This hits home with me, and I'm not proud of this either. Our 3 kiddos that we adopted, they have hit my emotions in a different way than our previous kids. And it's just, because they came from a different background. Obviously, they're different genetics. And oftentimes in my head, I'm kind of confused. Where's all this behavior coming from? And I allowed my emotions at times to get out in front of me. Right. And I've said some things that I wish I could have sucked right back into my mouth, And so I've had to apologize more to our kiddos that we've adopted than I probably ever did to my older kids, just because I've allowed emotion at times to jump out in front of me. And again, this is a practice, right? Leadership is a practice. So we get better at it when we understand our own emotions. Yep. But it's a practice, and I believe, getting better at that. But I have to be aware. Okay, emotions my heart's beating a little harder right now, or I can feel my blood pressure raising. So I have to understand where I am in the battle.
Right, and that whole idea that you were saying, even if you're wrong, that whole idea as an authoritative leader to be able to humble yourself sometimes and kind of be like, okay, I did mess up here, where someone who maybe not exemplifies what a leader or a good parent looks like, it may yell at their kids and go off the deep end, have that emotional aspect of it, and then not be able to take a step back and say, wow, I really screwed that one up. I should probably go talk to them. Yeah. As an authoritative leader, there is definitely a humbling aspect to that.
Yeah, and just to be clear, we don't change and flip flop in the middle of the battle.
Right. Absolutely. Yes.
Because that's very confusing to the people you're leading. But at the end, when the emotions are calm, it might be hours later, days later, whatever, when we realize, I made a bad call on that parenting decision. We go back and we own it. And we own it. So that's the authoritative leader. And we really want to... I sometimes joke I have parents that have read every parenting book under the sun. And that sounds, on the surface, that sounds great. Like, you're just gathering all this information. Trust your instincts. Are you a good-willed person? Are your kids just kids? Okay, and kids, have that selfish streak. That is fine. That's how they're wired. They're protecting themselves and what their own interest is. But sometimes we need to stop reading all the books, because the more we read, the more confused we get, and we start second-guessing everything that we've ever done. And discipline is something that's been around for many, many, many years, right? And so get with what you and your spouse believe to do and what's right. And of course, we're scripture based here with Rock Solid Families and Strong Dads in our podcast here. And so
that's a great parenting book to look at. The Bible.
Isn't that crazy how that works that way? And so just tap into that and say, hey, this is where we go.
Yeah.
So speaking of that, let's talk about the next step of this. So we got authoritative leader, but let's talk about the value of the united front.
Yeah.
Okay. So you're kind of looking at me like, So what's the united front mean to you?
So I know right before my wife and I decided to have kids, we made it a goal of ours that in everything we do, we want to make sure, mostly when it comes to discipline, but there's a lot more that goes into it, but making sure that Jenny and I, my wife and I, are on the same page. That everything we do geared towards our girls, we want to make sure that we have first discussed, kind of plan A, plan B, plan C together, away from them, not in front of them. That when we go at them, we're going in as a team, because I know my girls will find something that we're not on the same page, and they're gonna use that against us, and not necessarily intentionally, but they may drive that wedge where then it becomes an argument between my wife and I.
Right.
Where if we go at it together, united, together at them, it's so much more powerful. And in that, there's so many pieces, so many elements that go into raising kids. and making sure that all those elements, all those pieces, the grandparents, the aunts, the uncles, the cousins, making sure that everyone is on the same page and everyone's geared towards an end goal. And making sure that when we are disciplining our kids, that I'm telling my girls to do something a specific way that I want them, because again, I know as their dad, I know what's best for them.
Right.
Knowing that, later on in the day, if they're with their grandparents, that same message is being portrayed to them in the same manner that I want it to be. So.
That's excellent. In my role as a counselor, so much of the work that I did when it came to discipline and behavior plans and stuff, the work is actually getting everybody united.
Yeah.
Because the confusion that happens and the unrest that happens when moms has one view of discipline and expectations and dad has another, and then we happen to throw in a grandparent who watches the kids 2 or 3 days a week, and we have a lot of different things that are coming at this kid, and we wonder why the kid is starting to manipulate.
Yeah.
Well, we're actually making them very good manipulators by our own confusion.
Sure.
So a lot of my time with parents has always been spent with, okay, let's not even talk about the kid right now.
Right.
Let's talk about you and your spouse, and let's get you guys aligned on, first, what it is your house is going to stand for.
Sure.
Okay. How you're going to live, what the expectations are, and then how you're going to carry that out.
Right.
So what kind of discipline measures might you use? Again, this is where we get to that idea. I don't care whether we're spanking or we're giving timeouts or whatever. Are we agreeing on it?
Right.
And do we support each other with it? And so that's really where the work comes in. Once we do that, once we are united, your kid stops getting mixed messages and starts to realize that no matter where they go, everybody speaks the same language.
Yeah.
All right. So now we've taken the confusion out of this process.
Right. And we've touched on this before. If you have a divorce, if your kids are in a divorce situation, to make sure that you and the mother or the father of your child, make sure everyone's on the same page when it comes to disciplining your kids. That when they go over dad's house, discipline doesn't look different than when they go over mom's house. Making sure that united front doesn't necessarily have to just be in a married home. Divorce setting, it still should be very applicable. It still
boy, that's a tough one.
It is.
That's a tough one, and I've spent a lot of time with 2 different homes, the separated home, bringing them together around the same table and saying, okay, let's get united, because this is for the long haul.
Yeah.
And so there's lots of great work that can be done there.
Sure.
All right. Let's talk about expectations. So I mentioned that just a little bit ago. What about expectations? How do we know how the child's going to behave if the expectations are foggy?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So clear expectations. What that really means is you've laid out in advance for your child what you expect.
Right.
And if they don't know and you come in and you start just blazing at them with like yelling and screaming about something they messed up, and you really didn't clearly lay out what it is that they're supposed to do, shame on you.
Absolutely.
That's bad parenting.
Yeah.
Your kid just did what your kid did,
Right.
And
I think we all probably, I for sure do this, it's like, I haven't been given the opportunity to correct a bad behavior, and all of a sudden one of my girls do that, and I'm like, what are you thinking? Where I've never necessarily laid out that expectation for maybe the mundane, the smaller stuff. I've never laid out those. Okay, we don't do that in this house. Whether it be like cursing or something, and I haven't laid that out, that clear expectation. Where when they do that, the smaller stuff, it's harder to lay out a real fine, clear expectation. The bigger, what does our house really stand for? I think that's something, early on you need to ingrain that in your kids, and not necessarily just clear expectations. I'm a big believer in clear, high expectations. Expect a lot from your kids. Make sure your kids know that you expect them high expectations. I know growing up, my parents told me that if I got below a C on anything, I was not able to play sports.
Mm-hmm.
to me, that was big because I struggled in school, but I love sports, and it got me in gear, got me studying because I knew I wanted to play sports. And if I got that below that C, where the school standards are much, much lower, I had to maintain a D average for school, but my parents had higher expectations because they wanted more from me. Right. So they set that expectations, that clear, high expectations for me.
Yeah. I mean, in the idea that we have an expectation, it's clear, it's realistic, but it's high.
Yeah.
And so these are things that you'll never regret, and your kid will not regret that you push them to that because it'll get them to places that they may have not gotten to because you revealed to them what they're capable of. Yeah. Okay, so that's just great stuff. The clear expectations thing, when I sometimes with little kids, it's a little bit harder because you can word all you want to them. You can talk and talk and talk what you want them to do. Yeah. Sometimes you just, like cleaning a room. Yeah. Cleaning a room. You go in there and you yell at your kid because the room's not clean the way you want it cleaned. Let's make this more clear. Okay? I would sometimes go in and say, okay, let's clean the room together. Yeah. And so that I can show you what I expect, and you can see what it looks like, whether toys are over here or shoes are over here. Let's clean the room together, okay? And let's not make that a crazy emotional time, yelling and screaming. Let's just do it together, and let's take a picture of it. Yeah. Let's take a picture of it, okay? Take a picture of that thing, print it out, and hang it up in the kids' room. Yeah. At that point in time, the expectation is very clear.
Really clear.
That they could be 4 years old, and they know that their room needs to look like this picture for you to be satisfied. That's a good idea. Okay, and that you're just trying to get rid of the confusion for them. So making it clear, obviously, mom and dad on the same page of that, and not wavering on it. Because if one day you yell at your kid for the room not looking like it was supposed to, and 6 days a week you don't even address it, and then the mixed message is that, hey, 1 out of 6 chance I'm going to get busted. I'll float that one. Right. I'll try that one. Shoot, I'd go with that in a heartbeat, right?
And with clear expectations, I don't want to discredit this because the Bible lays out very clear expectations for you as a parent, for you as a dad. Like, those expectations have been set before you. So, yes, you should hold your kids and have clear, high expectations for your kids, but you should also have those same clear, high expectations for yourself. Yeah. Because they're pretty well laid out in biblical principles. I mean, how we're supposed to act as men is pretty clear. It's laid out.
Yeah, and it's oftentimes very easy to point out what your kids are doing wrong while you're doing all kinds of things that you need to clean up. So, for sure. We constantly have to be in check with that, and I think that comes through being consistent in your leadership, that your actions and your words match up pretty nicely. Sure. Again, this is not about being perfect, but it is about working towards the unity of our word and our actions. That's when your kids really start to trust what you do. And, that just makes them more secure. I'll never forget a time when my oldest son, we had a rule in our house that there was no video games, Xbox, or any of that until like the weekend, and only for like a very short time, less than an hour on a Saturday or something like that, okay? And you would have thought that we were like crucifying our boys. Are you kidding me? We never get to play. But that was it. Okay, that was the deal. And one day my older son had a buddy of his down in our house, down in the basement, and they, the Xbox and stuff was right in there. And I was working upstairs, and I kept hearing them say, his buddy say, "Come on, man, let's play Xbox. Let's play Xbox." And I kept hearing my son say, "No, we can't. No, we can't." And finally, my son got so tired of him asking. My son said to him, "Well, I'll tell you what. If you want to play Xbox, you can ask my dad, but I can tell you what he's going to say." And the whole idea of that just made me kind of smile, like, okay, my son gets the message.
He gets it, yeah.
He gets the message.
Yeah.
And that was just due to the consistency. It wasn't any great parenting idea. It was just trying to be consistent with him.
Yeah, that's funny.
All right. So how about this? Let's go to the next section of this. How about, logic versus emotions? Understanding logic, understanding emotions when it comes to parenting. I'll bet you can get pretty fired up.
I can.
I can see a little bit of emotion in you at times, right?
I do. I have tried and failed at times, but I have tried to keep calm, cool, collected when it comes to disciplining my kids. I'm not a big fan of yelling at my girls. I'm not going to say I've never done it, but it's something that I've really tried to, because I feel like that initial when the emotions really kind of get a hold of you, I personally have a greater tendency to yell and scream and try and snap the girls right at, like, whatever they're doing. Stop doing that. And I myself try and fix that daily. Try and make sure that I'm keeping that logic versus that emotions, because when emotions get a hold of me, I have a tendency to do some stupid things and say stupid things, because I know for me, when my emotions get a hold of me, I say hurtful things. When it comes to my wife, when my wife and I are in an argument, and emotions do get a hold of me, and she says something because she knows the buttons to push, and I say something that's hurtful, it's hard to take those back sometimes.
Yeah.
I can apologize, and it's no different when it comes to disciplining your kids. If those emotions, if your kids constantly do something over and over, and you constantly tell them to stop, and one time they do it, and you're tired or hungry, which happens a lot for me, and I say those things, it's like, man, I want that back. Can we rewind a little bit?
Yeah, and there are some ways to do that, but you never clearly erase that mark, right? And so understanding, there's two parts of this that are very, very important. It's understanding the emotions of your child and learning those. And as a parent, we get a hold of that, right? We see when our kids are upset, and some of our kids are criers, and some of them are pouters, and some of them just withdraw. So understanding when our kids gone into emotion, and understand when we are. And understanding that certain things should not be said or done or steered away from when the emotional mind is fired up. Yeah. Some of your greatest memories in life, and infamous memories, those that you wish you could erase, are when something bad was going on, and maybe somebody said something. I'll never forget a time when, I was in trouble. I messed up pretty bad one of my dad's trucks. I was 16 years old, okay? And I messed this up pretty bad, so I was already pretty emotional about it. And he came over and he said some things to me that those are etched in my mind. Sure. Now, and I don't hold that against him, because, listen, we're all human. But I still know very clearly what he said to this day. And so our brain and our memory are very much sharpened when when emotions come into play. And as you talked about before, our job is not just to change a behavior in the instant. I mean, we want the behavior to change, but our job is to change the character, to develop the character over time. And so to do that, we actually have to move our brains back into logic. Yep. All right, logical brain allows us to think through the process. And we can't get our kid to change behavior long term and change character if they're emotionally fired up, nor can we as parents. And so sometimes we stop. So let me give let me give you an example. Your kid runs out across the street, okay, and there's traffic coming back and forth, okay. Emotionally, you are fired up, right? Yeah. You're scared, you're angry, whatever it is, and you run out and you grab their hand and you jerk them back out of traffic, okay? Yeah. And your desire is, like, you probably say some things, right? That's not the time to pull them over and teach them all about street crossing. That's just not the time, right? Okay? Yes, we pull them out, and our emotion is what saved that kid, all right? But then we allow everything to calm down, and we follow that back up. One of the great things that my dad did always when he disciplined us is he would come back after emotions settled, and he would say, let's talk about this. Sure. And that's when we actually teach the logical side of what we were looking to do. So we encourage parents, understand when your brain and their brain is in logic and emotion, and try to steer away from trying to teach during an emotional time.
Right. And I talked about that when teaching my oldest to ride a bike, when she's she's not having it. She's frustrated because she can't get it. And then I keep pounding it like, come on, let's go. Ava, well, you can do it. It's just not working. She's not in a good place to learn and be taught.
So you're saying if you don't yell a little bit louder, she's not going to ride more, or what?
She's got it now, though. She's good. We rode like a mile and a half the other day.
Sweet.
Yeah, she's good.
Sweet.
Yes.
So let's move on to the next part here. How about predictable outcomes? How about teaching our kids and being more aware of them learning cause and effect?
Oh, yeah.
All right. So we don't want our kids to be victims, unknowing victims. Like, how did that happen to me?
Yep.
Right. So teaching your kids, especially when you're in that logical mind, if you do this, this is what will happen. Mm-hmm. Okay. So these are things that your child needs to start to connect the dots to.
Yep.
If you don't study for the test, you probably aren't going to get the grade that you want. All right? And so it's trying to teach them some things are predictable. And don't be surprised when you get the outcome that you get. Okay? So this is extremely important to start teaching this early. Now, let's jump that right into natural consequences. Okay? So let's say that we've said, listen, you have to study for your test. Yeah. And if you don't study for your test, you're probably not going to get a very good grade.
Sure.
Right? They go ahead and they do that. They don't study for the test. They get their grade back, and then they fail. They fail the test. Then that's the natural consequence.
Right.
Here's what a parent should not do. A parent should not call the school or call the teacher and make up some lame excuse for what went wrong.
Yeah.
I've had this happen so many times. It is so disturbing that a parent would see this happening and they would call and say, we were up late last night. We had a family emergency. They didn't get to study like they wanted to. Could they take the test again tomorrow? No. BS, right? Yeah. That is BS.
Sure.
You cannot do that to your kid. Not if you're going to expect that they are moving to a better character in their life, right? So predictable outcomes and natural consequences. You know, how about Ava and she's riding her bike, right? What are some natural consequences of riding the bike?
Well, it's when we were talking about this, in my house, my wife always does this, and so I've jumped on board. Why not? So we do option A and option B. So at night, my youngest one, she gets these tears at night where she just will not listen. And her favorite little stuffed animal is Goosey Goose. So we always tell her option A.
Goosey Goose. You probably named that.
No, she did. So option A, you can quit acting this way, and you get to sleep with Goosey tonight. Or option B is we take Goosey and you don't get to sleep with her and you keep crying. Go for it. But then, so just those natural consequences. Option A gets you this consequence. Option B gets you this consequence. So you decide and you pick it and let them make sure that the ball's in their court at that point. Yeah. But obviously having restrictions, having guidelines for giving them the ball in their court. Mia decides if she wants to keep fussing, keep kicking and screaming, then she just won't sleep with Goosey tonight, which she has to have every night. Like that's right. Like we'll search high and low for this daggone stuffed animal to try and find this thing every night because she has to have it. So she knows that if she keeps up her current, attitude and fussing, she doesn't get to sleep with Goosey. And it's funny because not too long ago, Ava, because we say your decision, this is your consequence. Not too long ago, Mia was having one of her things, and my oldest, Ava, walked up to her and said, Mia, option A. My 6-year-old is telling my 4-year-old this. It's fantastic.
Yeah. And that's the point. And so just to kind of make our point stronger, if she did not quit crying and she didn't get Goosey and she continued to cry for another hour and you're getting exhausted, you cannot go give her Goosey.
Yep, absolutely.
Okay? You cannot. Because you made a statement and you have to stand behind that. And it may be a restless night for her and you. Okay, but the idea that she develops the self-discipline and the regulation that next time, tomorrow night, she says, oh, this isn't worth it. Yeah. Okay? And so where I see the fall down of many parents is they go, you know what, just not worth it. Just not worth it. Go give her Goosey. Go give her the doll. No, we can't do that. Yeah. Not because, that would change the behavior right now.
Yeah.
but it would not change the character of the child.
Yeah.
Okay? And so what a great example. So natural consequences, don't save your kids from those things, whether it's falling and scraping a knee or losing a privilege that they get. Let it roll. I see this all the time. If your kid has the habit of forgetting their book bag or their homework or their lunch to school, once in a great while, if that happens, once, twice a year, whatever, throw it in the car and take it up. But if this is your child's pattern, shame on you for bringing your child's homework to school or their lunch to school because they forgot it. No, stop doing that. Natural consequences. Well, today you got a bad grade because you, again, forgot your homework. Or today you did not get to eat, or you only got a milk or a peanut butter and jelly sandwich from the cafeteria because you forgot your lunch again.
Sure.
Okay?
Yeah.
So that's just real life.
Yeah. And kind of, one of the last things we have, which I think really kind of, it really exemplifies why we've talked about everything we have. Always having balance with love and grace.
Yeah.
Is really, really big. And I know you've touched on it before that our goal in disciplining our kids should not be to stop the bad behavior. That initial, because that's the easy one. I can yell a little bit louder, say, Mia, stop crying. Our goal should always be to build character in our kids, and making sure, my goal in raising my girls is to not have the most well-behaved girl in the school.
Right.
That's not my goal. My goal is to have my daughter, in her heart of heart, know that God's way is the right way. Mm-hmm. And through that, she's probably going to have pretty good behavior. If she understands that God, that biblical principles is why mom and daddy led her and disciplined her a certain way, that ultimately the end result is going to be what you want, but I don't have to yell and scream to get you to that point. So it's just building that biblical characters in my girls that I want, that I don't necessarily want to stop. And, there are certain behaviors that I want to fix and correct at the time when it's happening. But my ultimate goal is more for building biblical characters in my girls.
Yeah, that's excellent. I mean, that's just so much what this is about. And when our kids are going to get us upset, they're going to do the wrong things, and kids are kids, right? And so for us to hold on to that with anger and resentment, it speaks to our own immaturity and our own lack of understanding of God's way. Just think about us being God's children and how often we just probably torque him, you more than me, right?
No doubt. No doubt.
But that whole idea of, when we discipline, we don't hold grudges. We don't throw it back up in their face 2 days later, 3 weeks later. Well, remember when you did this? No, we've got to have grace. We've got to have love. We've got to let some things roll. We've got to understand where our kids are. This is not a cookie cutter approach to parenting. We've got to learn to read our kids. And sometimes certain circumstances mean that we say, you know what, let's just let this roll, and let's choose our battles on this. Because at the end of the day, your kids are going to see your love, and you want that relationship with them. And being a drill sergeant day in and day out, you might change the behavior, but did you really develop the character and the love with that character? So we always want to be aware of that. And I think that's why it's really important that mom and dad are on the same page, because sometimes I could be really charged up and be angry about something, and my wife can help buffer that.
Sure.
She can say, behind closed doors, we don't ever talk about how we're going to parent the kids in front of them. We always talk about it behind closed doors. And for her to help buffer me, or me to help buffer her, so that we're seasoning that discipline the right way for our kids. Yeah,
because truly, that you want to talk about what the greatest gift outside of telling your kids who Jesus is. The greatest gift you can give your kids is being on the same page, staying married.
Yes.
And the more you begin to have different thought process, different ways to go about things, the more that wedge is going to continue to drive in that marriage. So that is one of the greatest gifts you can give to your kids, is being on the same page, staying married. That's you want to talk about long-term effects, that generational stuff we talk about. Man, that's huge.
I love it. So hey, Kyle, this is just, I hope that our listeners, I hope you guys out there find this useful. And maybe some things of our conversation are kind of no-brainers for you, but other parts of it, hopefully you go, yeah, you know what, that's something I need to think about. So our challenge for you is to work through these things and to talk with your wife and even other people that are involved in raising your kids. Get everybody united, get on the same page, and let's work to build followers of Christ. And so, great show.
Yeah,
thanks.
Good stuff.
Man, you actually kind of know what you're talking about.
Oh, yeah, right.
This is good.
Trial and error.
Yeah, a lot of that for both of us.
Yes,
all right, well, hey, we're going to sign off here. Listeners, thanks for hanging in there. If you like what you hear, we just ask that you come behind us there and support us. We are at Rock Solid Families. You can get my website at rocksolidfamilies.org. If you have any communications you want us to talk about a certain show, or you just need to get in touch with me, you can get me at Hutch at rocksolidfamilies.org. Call 812-576-7625. So, Kyle, thanks a lot for a great show.
Yep.
We'll talk later.
Sounds good. Go out there and be some strong dads.